So what to lubricate and what not to lubricate. And for the lubricant, for the grease, if you want, I will put in the comment section a few suggestions. So be careful what you use, not something that it's sticky or that will get sticky after a few years. So let's just see what to lubricate. First, I think it's very important to lubricate this kind of, you call it what you want. We have this bump here, right there. And this metal bump is traveling around this plastic piece which has irregular shape, and I think it's important to lubricate the side, the vertical side of it. There's a few areas where the metal bump here does not touch it, but since you don't know which areas are those, just go all around like this. And also you can rotate a little bit, go gently, and maybe try to remember the position to bring it back at the place. You can rotate this thing a little bit if you want more access at some point. So this area here around, important to lubricate. Once you put grease on it, it will grease this metal bump as well, but you can grease it as well if you want. Then you have this slide which pushes back the arm. It goes a little bit like this. You can push it with your hand and gives you an idea how much travel it has and what are the areas to lubricate. I prefer putting grease right here at the corners on both sides, on the other side, outer side as well. And that will lubricate the slide. If you want, you can also add grease at the top of the slide, at the side of the slide, and if you can, underneath the slide, both sides, and also push it a little bit. Just move it like this to make sure you spread properly that grease. It's not very important to put grease here because there are not a lot of forces on the metal. It's maybe going to get it more quieter, but also, perhaps one important thing, the first thing will be to remove the old grease that you find here. If you find it's old and sticky, remove it everywhere you find it. That's important before you apply the new grease. Then you have another slide here, it's like a metal pin. And again, it does slide on this surface here, at the inner sides here. Underneath, you cannot really reach for it, but you may want to apply some grease. I would just apply like this. A bump of grease. I will just spread it underneath this pin here and on top of it, and maybe just go ahead and push a little bit to spread that grease all the trouble. That's one of the things. Another part important to lubricate is this part here, plastic one, which has like two angles. You want to lubricate inside the angle all this trouble, all these edges, 1, 2, 3, 4. I'm not sure if it's touching on that one, but it's the vertical part of it again that needs to be lubricated, and this one sits against that plastic bump. You don't need to lubricate the bump because it's going to get grease from the plastic piece here, and I think when it's stationary it stays in the center right there at this point. There is also a pivot here, but it's difficult to work it. I do think it has grease originally. Just see if it works smoothly without forcing too much. I don't think it's a good idea to try to remove this metal clip because it is very stiff, at least on this turntable, and you can lose it somewhere in those holes and never find it again. Even if you lose it, it's not that bad. I think it will still stay in place. Remember where the spring is catching. If you want to remove it and lubricate the shaft here or the pivot, that's up to you, but I don't think it's that important because there's not a lot of forces. As for the gear, you can see that I did put some grease on it, but thinking twice, I don't think it's really needed. And also it's a small risk that you use some grease that may get sticky at some point. It will stick more than it will do good. I think it's not necessary to lubricate this gear all around. The same for here, but I'll talk in a moment about it. There's not forces on it, and also it only works once when it rejects the arm. So it's not something that will work all the time or that will have forces on it. And plastic on plastic is not going to wear unless perhaps you play 1 million records. So it's just up to you. I think people on forum do like to lubricate it. It's not going to get it quieter or smoother working or something like this. Also, perhaps you notice here, I did put, it goes some grease on this gear here from that one. You need to be careful because you have the plater here, but also there is another important metal part right here which is touching the plastic shaft here. And this metal bump and this part of this plastic piece, there must not be grease in there. You do not want grease on this side of this plastic gear. On this area here, do not put any grease. If you happen to smell grease, make sure you wipe it all around clean, because this metal part will touch on it, and you just don't want this metal part to stick with the grease on the plastic part. It will cause this part to malfunction, and it will have a problem when rejecting the arm at the end of the record. This brings me to the parts that you should not lubricate. This part do not touch anywhere with grease on it. It's a part that moves very, very lightly, and if you put any grease, maybe on this metal bump or this one, or maybe on the pivots here, it will stick in place and it's going to malfunction. You will have a problem, and it's pretty difficult to clean that grease from there. Also, do not put any kind of grease on this black metal piece. When the record it's arriving, actually the stylus is arriving at the end of a record, it's this guy here that will touch the metal piece like that, will bring it here, this one spins and it hits this bump here, and it lifts the arm and it rejects, it puts the arm back in place. If you put grease on this area or on this area or on this black piece, it will just stick to it. It's not going to go back, or maybe this piece will stick to the black one and it's not going to move like this. It will stay there. You will have a malfunction. So you need to remove that grease and make sure it's very, very clean. So this is about the parts. There's also these parts, do not lubricate. May I add, because my platter, when I drop it here, when I put it in place, it kind of sticks here on the shaft because the shaft is really tight. So I did put a smear of grease, but only on the metal part of the shaft, not on the plastic piece. And now the platter, it's kind of easier to lift when I needed to lift it for some reason. Okay, if you have any suggestion, don't hesitate. There is obviously the motor here. Never put any kind of grease on this shaft because the belt, the rubber belt, will touch the grease, and that's a problem. Obviously you have the bearings here underneath. Actually it's underneath here, but you don't need to work on it unless it has a problem.